November 7, 1861. 7 months after the fall of Fort Sumter, troops under the leadership of Union Navy Commodore Samuel Francis DuPont and Army General Thomas W. Sherman staged a combined land and sea attack on the South Carolina Sea Islands. The islands, located between Charleston and Savannah, if captured could be a major victory for the Union. Known for their abundant cotton, the Union could seize the islands and their crop to help stimulate the federal treasury, which by 1861 was already close to depletion. With the capture of Port Royal Sound, the Navy could effectively, quoting historian Willie Lee Rose, destroy inland communication between two of the South's major trading ports, Charleston and Savannah, and blockade Savannah completely. More importantly, if the Union could establish an effective Southern blockade across the southern Atlantic coast, Lincoln's administration could monitor Confederate war vessels, prevent trade between the South and England, and possibly win the war. Beginning at 9:25 a.m., a massive fleet of Union vessels entered Port Royal Sound and fired non-stop on Confederate vessels protecting Fort Walker and Fort Beauregard. Known as the Day of the Big Gun Shoot by the local enslaved populations, the naval assault lasted into the afternoon when Confederate soldiers ran out of ammunition and abandoned their posts for safety. Reflecting on the day of the battle, Sam Mitchell, a former slave, listened to the big gun shoot with his mother, but thought the commotion in the sky was thunder. His mother explained that it was not thunder, but Yankees that had come to give them freedom. By 1 p.m. that same day, the Union had successfully won the battle, captured Port Royal Sound, and proudly displayed their flags, symbolizing liberty and justice on the Confederate forts. However, another battle would soon take place shortly after the Union seized the islands. The Confederate soldiers were not the only ones to abandon their homes on the islands. As soon as the armed conflict ended, slave owners, planters, and white residents fled the islands for Charleston. When DuPont's troops arrived in the town of Beaufort, they found only, quote, one white man who was too drunk to move. According to Rose, quote, 83% of the population was comprised of 10,000 slaves who once worked under both the harsh slave codes of the U.S. South and the lash of their masters, became both casualties of the Confederacy and assets to the Union. Rose also tells of one fugitive planter who came back to the Sea Islands during the federal occupation and sought to make hot work of his own cotton because with the cotton, the Negroes were an asset to the invaders. Without it, they were a liability. Many planters hoped by destroying their cotton and edible crops, the slaves, faced with starvation, would return to their masters. However, the slaves, determined to maintain their freedom, quote, broke the cotton gins, looted their masters' houses and furniture, unquote, and resisted attempts by their former owners to desert the safety of the Union forces. Regarded as contrabands of war, the black population of the Sea Islands had no idea whether or not the Union forces were going to be liberators or new masters, and neither did the troops under the Union Army. However, the enslaved population sang out in hope of a successful federal occupation. No more peckle corn for me, no more, no more. No more driver's lash for me. No more pine of salt for me, no more 100 lash for me. No more mistress call for me, no more, no more. Many thousands go. Faced with 10,000 slaves who simultaneously yearned for and demanded their freedom and multiple plantations of cotton, Lincoln left what to do with the contrabands of war to the Secretary of the Treasury Department, Salmon P. Chase. A staunch abolitionist, Chase decided to implement the first experiment that would turn newly released slaves into free laborers. Known as the Port Royal Experiment, the South Carolina Sea Islands would serve as what historian Willie Lee Rose has termed a rehearsal for Reconstruction. In the next episode, we will explore the bounds of citizenship for the newly released slaves on the Sea Islands of South Carolina during the Port Royal experiment. If slaves were treated like freedmen, were they not citizens? And if the privileges of citizenship were extended to refugee slaves, was the Civil War indeed a conflict about slavery?